Welcome to my YouTube video. Today I'm going to be filming a January wrap-up, what I read in January video. I read 12 books this month, which is pretty good for me. I'm going to pop some information here on kind of the data of my reading, how many books I read in paperback, audiobook, genres, and my average rating. So I started the month by listening to 19 Steps by Millie Bobby Brown. This is a novel that is very loosely inspired on her family's experience during World War II. It is a historical fiction. If I could use one word to describe this book, it would be fine. It was fine. Like I mentioned, I listened to it through audiobook on Spotify, and I think the 3-star rating that I gave it was due to my entertainment with the audiobook. I'm not sure I'd have rated it a 3 had I read it in physical format. I know there is a lot of controversy around this book and the ghostwriting element, but I did watch a video where Jack Edwards kind of unpacked this and made a commentary on ghostwriting in the publishing industry and what this means for the publishing industry and kind of like negatives and positives, which I would definitely recommend you watch. The audiobook was good, you know, and I think she's just very entertaining. Like, I think on camera she has a very entertaining personality. My favourite video of the year is still The Dirtier the Better.
The dirtier the better.
Love it. I absolutely love it. I then read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I rated this 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a romantasy. Thinking back to reading them, because I did read them so fast, I kind of mixed this one up with the 3rd book. Yeah, I was absolutely gobsmacked at the end of this book. It was very fast paced. I really don't need to hype this book up or the series any more than they already are, because everyone and their mum knows about these books. But I did think there was really good character development for Feyre in this book. Really loved this book actually. Oh my god. I then listened to Dear Dolly on audiobook. It is a non-fiction self-help book based on Dolly Alderton's time writing as an agony aunt in the Sunday Times paper. This covered a lot of different topics, and I did think it was a very validating and healing listen. My only criticism would be that it was so broad that it made it harder to I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it was so broad that it made it harder for me to obviously relate to everything, because I've not experienced all of the scenarios that she was speaking about, but I think it made it less touching to an individual because of that. But then the very nature of the book meant that it would be broad. Next up was another audiobook. I really went to town on my audiobooks this month. I listened to Undoctored by Adam Kay. I'd previously read 'Twas the Night Shift before Christmas, and I have This Is Going to Hurt on my shelf. I rated this 3 stars. It was an enjoyable audiobook, and then something happens which makes you really angry at Mr. Adam Kay, and you're just thinking, wow, you are a terrible person. And then the next scene was the biggest guilt trip of my life, and I know that wasn't intended, and obviously he says in the book he takes full accountability for what he did, but obviously I was very triggered by the next scene, and I felt like I couldn't be mad at him for what he did, and it was very conflicting and it was very triggering. I think I was on my way to work and I was just sat at the bus stop, and then I just listened to it. I was like, men are trash, oh my god, can't believe it. And then the next scene happened and I was like, oh, it was just a lot. It was a lot. Definitely look up the trigger warnings if you want to read this book. Another audiobook, oh my god, I listened to Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. I rated this a 3 star. It is a contemporary fiction romance. I thought it was an insightful story into the ebbs and flows of modern day dating, and like a deep exploration into the concept of ghosting and the profound impact that this can have on people, and people's self-esteem. This then sent me on like a, I don't know, for ages after this, I was just thinking about the instant like gratification and like dopamine that dating apps and like swiping and responses like give you. And now I'm just really interested in that as a concept, so I'm definitely gonna read more into that. But 3 stars overall. Wasn't my favourite, wasn't bad. I then finished A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. I think I read a lot of audiobooks because these books were so big, and kind of like in between finishing them on my daily commute, I could not put this in my bag. This could not come anywhere with me. I rated this 5 stars. It was exquisite. I loved it. Like I said, I jumped into this one straight away after the second book. But what really makes me sad in hindsight is that I didn't know this was like the 3rd main book until I was reading A Court of Frost and Starlight, and I looked at the reviews and everyone was saying like, oh, you know, wasn't expecting this after the main books ended and blah blah blah. So I was really sad that I didn't know and like I feel like I didn't devour it enough because I was just waiting to get to the next one. But I did really enjoy it, and I felt that this had really good development for some of the side characters who were kind of just there in the second book and you kind of were just introduced to them. But this was really good character development and world building as well. Next up, I read the novella in the series A Court of Frost and Starlight. I rated this a 3 star. After reading reviews and kind of understanding, I think in the acknowledgements as well, the kind of like situation that was happening at the time, this was supposed to be a longer book. I thought it was sweet. I quite liked the mundanity after 3 really fast-paced, action-packed books. But not to spoil anything, and I won't say anything, but some of the spy scenes in this book, if you read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but it did really take me out of it, and I was like, what is happening? What is happening right now? I really couldn't believe them. The next book I listened to was a memoir, and it was A Pocket Full of Happiness by Richard E. Grant. I met Richard E. Grant at a legal event last year, and he kind of did a segment in the day of like conferences, and I hadn't heard of him before, and he spoke about his book, and you know, kind of everyone was asking him questions and everyone was going crazy. I was like, who is this man? What have I missed out on? Have I been living under a rock? The memoir follows his wife's last few years and months following her cancer diagnosis, and Richard E. Grant kind of made diary entries as things were happening, and kind of memories that cropped up and special things that they did during this time, and then also it was kind of like flashbacks into his past and how he made a name for himself and his journey after meeting her, because she was his voice coach, accent coach, dialect coach, and kind of just explores their life together. And the reason it's called A Pocket Full of Happiness is because that was her like dying wish for him and his daughter to find a pocket full of happiness in every day. I didn't rate this book because it felt uncomfy to do so. It was really sad. Like, I knew what it was going to be about going into it, but it was really sad. But I loved the concept of like him keeping a diary entry and like real tangible and evidencing like real things that were happening at the time. I have tried to keep a diary or a journal before and I haven't been able to do it, but I think being able to look back at days like that and remembering what she said specifically, or like he kind of tracks how she deteriorates, and it's really visceral, but it's really heartwarming at the same time, like the way he speaks about her and their life together. Definitely a good audiobook to listen to. I then read the last book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Silver Flames. I rated this a 4-star. It was just a tad bit too long for what actually ends up happening in the novel. I loved the Valkyrie female friendship type. My books are falling. I loved the Valkyrie female friendship storylines that were going on, but I am quite conflicted upon like digesting this book and taking it in, because like I said, I think it was a bit too long, but I understand in context of the character that is being developed and like her redemption arc. I just think because of all of that, the end was very rushed, and I was anticipating this big end scene for the whole entire book, like you know what's going to happen, and then I was getting to like the last 200 pages, 150 pages, 50 pages, and I was like, what is...
Hello?
And then there was another twist that I did not foresee. So two huge plot points were happening at the same time, and I just felt like I was running out of time, running out of pages, and I think it could have been done a little bit better because it didn't feel as impactful because it was kind of so rushed. I then read I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek Si-hee. This is a self-help memoir. I read this really quickly. It's a very, very short book, but I didn't rate this book because it kind of felt like I was looking into a mirror. It really made me reflect on things that I feel and how I communicate these to people or how I internalize them. It was quite comforting to literally read my inner thoughts, and I really like the concept of the book. If you don't know, it is essentially a transcription, but not exactly, of the author's therapy psychiatrist sessions. I really did enjoy it, and I know there's like an extended version of this which I'm definitely going to check out. Last but not least, I read the infamous Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I rated this at 4 stars. It is a romantasy. I read this in one day. I do have some... This is heavy, I'm going to put it down. I do have some qualms with that book. I don't think the world building was enough, and I do think this is a general consensus amongst the reviews that I've read and videos that I've watched. It was so fast paced that I had whiplash the entire time. It was like a really big scene would happen, and then the next page would be like, it would go a month later, and then so instead of having any mundanity or any character development, world building, it would just go straight into the next high stakes event. Also, there is so much death in this book, and I did not care about a single person who died. There is one character who dies at the end, and that was a little bit more like meaningful, but not really enough, and he's a character that is in the book like quite consistently. I enjoyed it. It was my first book that I've read with dragons in it, and I absolutely loved the dragons. I am reading the second book right now, but I think I don't know why, because they're relatively the same length, but it's harder to consume. Thank you so much for watching my January wrap up. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below and subscribe so you don't miss my next wrap up video. Bye.